Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. And today we are going through a quick conversation, or a snippet of a conversation I should say, between Gary Stevenson, or Gary's Economics, and Jimmy the Giant. Now if you don't know who either of these two people are, they're probably two of the worst grifters that I have ever seen online. And I do mean that. When it comes to Jimmy the Giant, I certainly know him less than Gary's Economics. However, I did do a nearly 2-hour reaction video to his takes on the Americanisation of Britain. And while you can get very basic historical facts right, effectively the video was 15 minutes of setting up getting to the 20th century, and then saying that the only influence America had was Margaret Thatcher's free market economic policies, which, by the way, she called Victorian values for a reason, because they're actually British Victorian values, and then wanted to say Farage bad. Now, to be absolutely fair, Farage absolutely does have some American influence. Everyone does in this day and age. However, that's mainly due to the fact that he, say, wants a second elected chamber rather than the Lords. Guess what? I would presume that Jimmy also wants something like that. But is that the example he uses? No, his example is, oh, these people like corporations and free markets, as if that's not literally a British invention during Victorian liberalism, Manchester School economics. Hell, you want to go back even further, he thinks the idea of freedom is an American value, despite the fact, really, that came about from the Bill of Rights 1689 from, guess where? England. It's an English value. Anyway, I have no respect for Jimmy the Giant, but Gary's Economics is a bit more of an interesting case. Gary is taken a bit more seriously by the mainstream and, well, especially the alternative media as well, because Gary's story is actually quite an interesting one. He did come from a not too well off area of, I believe it was East London, I don't really care, it's somewhere in the south. Managed to do pretty well at school, managed to get to the London School of Economics to study economics and mathematics, and then went over to the financial trade sector in Citibank and became a trader there. And he constantly talks about how good of a trader he was and says that he was the #1 trader in Britain and everywhere, and it's always stunk to high heaven to me, and I just kind of assumed that everyone else knew that he was exaggerating and basically lying. Because what type of trader who is the best in Britain then gives up that job to study economics at the University of Oxford? The answer is one that is lying, and someone who actually goes through that, and I would really recommend going through this 10-minute clip, is an account called David. He's quite large on Twitter with about 20,000 followers, and he basically did a TikTok video saying that, yeah, this stinks to high heaven and I've looked into everything, but just to go over one point here.
Now, the first red flag is professing to be the most profitable trader at a bank. You just do not know this. And the other thing is that he was making about $2 million, he says, in 2011. Now, even today, managing directors can only make about $2 million. And these aren't 21, 23-year-olds.
I don't want to dwell too much on the introduction to Gary Stevenson. But as I say, David is a guy who is well within the trader circles and knows all sorts of people and networks with all sorts of people. So to cut a long story short, go watch that video, it's in the description by the way, but David just posts onto Twitter that Gary Stevenson is just absolutely full of nonsense. So along with blatant errors in economic facts and how things actually work, he's just a delusional liar who says things with confidence that even people in the industry sound like it could be feasible. So below was his superior at Citibank. From my memory, Gary was not the most profitable trader globally in Citibank, so even I got the detail wrong. He says globally rather than just in Britain. It's not verified, it's self-proclaimed. Gary was not one of the biggest traders in the world, that's absolutely delusional. Of course, the above is not going to sell any books. I assume Gary sensationalised his story to sell books, I get it, but for what it's worth, here's my memory of events. It is quite a remarkable story from a challenging East London upbringing to getting into a trading desk at Citibank. Gary was welcomed, supported and mentored by many at Citi and the bank for about 6 years. He had a couple of very good trading years, got paid very well and then started to unravel quite poorly both physically and mentally. In other words, it sounds like the high stress job at Citibank got to Gary, and effectively he just doesn't want that for anyone else, and that's why he talks absolute delusions about the way the world works. I've had a few people in the comments say I should react to Gary's Economics. I find him very, very difficult to listen to, and you'll probably see why in this video. But also, I've never really felt the need to go through it, because I kind of just got the feeling everyone knows that he's talking nonsense, but Leftists take him very seriously. He's on Novara Media. He may have been on mainstream before, I can't really remember that much detail. But you're listening to someone say that they're 20 odd years old and say they're the best trader ever at Citibank, and you're telling me that he left Citibank. You're telling me Citibank couldn't offer him anything to keep him as the best trader. Nah, it's obvious nonsense. It's always been obvious nonsense. And if you've never even been suspicious that it's obvious nonsense, you're not worth my time. You're clearly not smart enough to live in this world where dishonest people are usually much better at hiding their dishonesty than that. Anyway, thank you very much, David, for getting that information out there, and I'm glad I can share it. Anyway, at this point, I think I'm done with introductions. Let's just get into the clip that I got from Twitter.
So Jimmy the Giant has a YouTube channel where he talks politics, economics, subcultures.
If you ever wanted confirmation that Gary's a grifter, I'd say this video is actually one of them. There is absolutely no way any serious economist or anyone who actually has an interest in understanding how the world works properly would ever have anyone like Jimmy the Giant on to talk about economics. But anyway, I was going to skip the introduction, but there's something I want to go through first.
He's got a video on there called How I Escaped the Alt-Right Pipeline, which talks about how he was a big fan of Jordan Peterson, wasn't he?
Yeah, I love the book.
Yeah, just an incredible start. Jordan Peterson, part of the alt-right pipeline. Yeah, the alt-right, they're well known for not liking Jews. Who does Jordan Peterson work with now? Oh, Ben Shapiro, like one of the most famous Jews on online spheres these days. Just total nonsense. That's a video I've also been interested in covering, but I think it would just make me too angry, so I've always kind of avoided it. But once again, this is a point I really want everyone to understand. There's a loose network over on the left where they will platform each other and have this kind of incestuous relationship where Gary writes a book, he ends up on Novara Media to sell it, and then Grace Blakely writes another book. They all then get on each other's channels once again to sell each other's brands, and it creates this whole ecosystem where effectively they have dedicated leftist audiences where they will literally just sell them lies, nonsense, and easy answers to then effectively try and sell all these books and stuff like that. Now, you could say that Jordan Peterson with the Daily Wire is doing things like that as well. However, I would argue that Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro don't particularly sell easy answers. There is no way you can read 12 Rules for Life and say, yep, these are all easy answers, when it's quite clear that these are just things to help you get started. The rest of it you kind of have to figure out by yourself, which, by the way, isn't an easy answer.
And how he's been watching a lot of stuff. He's been watching our channel, and it's made him more skeptical about these right-wing ideas. He's made him more interested in inequality.
Just imagine being a fan of Jordan Peterson, and then it's Gary's economics of all people that make you think, maybe capitalism isn't all it's cracked up to be. Again, Gary Stevenson doesn't really put anything out there that I would say is particularly new. It's an incestuous relationship, as I say. The left wing have had no new ideas really probably since the 70s, probably since Thatcher and Reagan. Hence they always have to go back and say, oh, remember Thatcherism? Yeah, we've definitely had that since 2008, at the very least. But it works for very little more than envy. An awful lot of things going wrong in the world at the moment are literally left-wing ideas. You know, we're taxed to a point we've never been taxed before in Britain, at least in living memory, and yet we are told it's too capitalist. Like, just from a very basic position, it's all nonsense. But yeah, honestly, I think I'd be mortified if I ever said, yeah, I think Gary Stevenson has some pretty good ideas and he's made me hate Jordan Peterson. I think I'd actually die from embarrassment. You got to bear in mind as well, this particular clip was put onto Twitter with the tweet, "We need a better message for young men." And your better message for young men is to hate Jordan Peterson. I don't really know what to tell you with that. Don't get me wrong, Jordan Peterson is not as good as he was before he ended up in that Russian hospital, unfortunately. But I would argue he is still very, very much worth listening to. But people I know who say they don't like Jordan Peterson, the only thing they will cite is that he talks to Ben Shapiro. I just find it so odd. I don't really understand all the hate for Ben Shapiro. I really don't. I think he's fine.
I look at my demographics on the channel and we do really well at like 25 to 35, 35 to 45. We don't do that well with 24 and under.
Oh, funny that. I do pretty well with 24 and under. I have a bit of a peak from 25 to 34-year-olds, but 24 and under, that's about a fifth of my audience. I would imagine Gary's economics is much more to the liking of millennials and Gen Xers, who have really known nothing but left-wingism since they were born. With Gen Z, they've also had that issue. The problem is that they've been very explicit on, not liking men, really. And I would imagine that's partly why I do so well, because I think I actually have a really positive message for boys, which is, yeah, the world may be against you in quite a lot of ways. Is there much you can do about it? Probably not till you're older. Till then, try and build up skills. I'm not one of these people that goes on about, oh, don't join the army, don't go to university, because it's pretty ridiculous advice, that, if you ask me. Despite the fact they're woke hellholes, well, universities especially, the military's avoided it quite a bit. Not completely, obviously, but, quite a bit. There's still decent skills you can learn there. If you are wanting to go into an industry where you need to be quite academic, go to university. If not, yeah, there's alternatives out there. Don't worry about that. The army, though, if you're thinking about it, it's probably worth going. That's all I can say. This lot, though, they just say, oh, just organise, just unionise. Yeah, go to these protests. Start trying to make a change through that way. And it's just completely unrealistic. Mass protests don't change anything, but they will never say that. But the thing is that they want to keep your morale quite down, because then they will effectively be snake oil salesmen and say, here are all the easy answers, they're in this book, buy it. And it's disgusting behaviour, really, but, that's the world we live in, unfortunately.
Felt the same.
And
it does surprise me that Jimmy the Giant's having the same issue as Gary there, I'll be honest. As I say, it seems to just be a lot of people that like to hear Maggie Thatcher bashing. I think that Gen Z don't really know enough about her. Either that or, especially the boys, they're probably very sceptical of everything they've been taught up until this point, just because they see so much in the real world that contradicts these leftist values that they're taught everywhere from TikTok to school.
I think the reason why is, when you're 24 and under, and I was like this when I was 24 and under, you're on it. You're going for it. True. Like, you trying to make it, you trying to make your money, and like maybe to some degree, you believe, if I go for it, if I'm going to run for it, I'm going to make it, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea why Jimmy's agreeing with that. That is not your average 18 to 24-year-old's attitude these days. I'm not going to lie. Your average 18 to 24-year-old has effectively coasted through life, because all they've really had to do is be told what to do. If they go to uni up until the age of 21, that's your life. And then once you get thrown into the real world, it's a little bit scary. You don't really know what to do. You don't really know how to apply for a job. You may have been given some CV training, but realistically at uni, all you're taught what to do is how to get on a grad scheme. You're not taught about the wider job market or anything like that, because why would they want that? Universities are ranked on how good a job you get after uni, so of course they're going to push you to the grad schemes, because that's supposed to be the pipeline. I was very sceptical of that for quite a few reasons, mainly because I did geology, and to get a decent geology job you have to do an awful lot of world travelling, and I didn't particularly want to do that because, frankly, I quite like my family and I didn't want to spend my life in Australia or things like that. And I know loads of people that would jump on that particular job opportunity, but it just wasn't for me, and I don't think it was for an awful lot of people. The furthest people would move to is London, because again that's where most of the jobs are, but again they just coast. They go to a grad scheme or something like that. If you got headhunted to be a city trader, I could imagine that you were already in the mindset like this. I have high doubts that Jimmy the Giant was thinking like that. I don't think that's your issue with young men. I think your issue with young men is that they have grown up to be very sceptical, and you are such an obvious liar, they are very sceptical of you. Whereas I try and pride myself on being the most honest I can be, and I think it's very much appreciated by my audience. I mean, they tell me it is, so I think I'm doing a good job there.
Very few people above 25 believe that.
Very few people, full stop, believe that. You only believed it because you got fast-tracked onto a trading desk, where it is high pressure and you are told by everyone, yeah, your job is to do nothing but make money. That is a very unique environment, and I don't know why Jimmy's saying yeah to all this. Well, I do know why he's saying yeah to all this. It's a loose network, and he wants to sell his channel and saying, oh, I actually disagree with that. Oh, that might annoy Gary here. You got me on this show, Gary. I'd be disagreeing absolutely everywhere, and it would make for an actual interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And
so
the truth, because the truth is, once you're older than 25, if you have any visibility, like of people from different class backgrounds, you realise, fuck me, literally everyone I know is exactly as rich as their dad.
Yeah, I'd argue I have some visibility of people from different social backgrounds. I have absolutely no idea what he's talking about. Pretty much everyone I know, their dads own houses. Pretty much out of everyone I know, maybe less than half of them own a house at the age of pushing 30. Again, at 25, nobody I knew owned a house. In fact, no, sorry, I think one person I know owned a house, and that was because they effectively were gifted it by their parents. And even then, he was not as rich as his dad, who was a millionaire, while he was working on security systems for some supermarket. I can't remember exactly what he did, but it was in software. There's very few people I know who had a house by 25, and if they did, they had massive help from their parents. Even now, at pushing 30, I don't know anyone this age who is almost as rich as their dad. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know why Jimmy is agreeing with it. This is not a good start.
I come from a poor background, and then I went to like LSE, and I went to, even the kids who go to LSE, even the kids who go to LSE that come from poor backgrounds, they don't get good jobs.
Yes, that's my experience of uni as well. Why is that? Oh, because we've overeducated and there's not enough grad schemes to go around. That's it. That's the main reason. I didn't get a grad scheme until I was 23, 2 years after uni. Why? Because academically, I don't want to say I bottled it at uni. I don't think I did that badly, but I certainly didn't do as well as I should. It still annoys me. I was 0.5% off a 2-1, and it still annoys me. And so an awful lot of grad schemes would be like, no, we won't let you in unless you've got experience. So I had to go out and get experience. You know, I was working 60 hours a week for a year just to get an internship at a software house while I was also working at a supermarket. I would still make videos at that point, by the way. I wasn't doing them daily, obviously. I've got to a point where I'm much more comfortable now and I can actually do them daily. But yeah, it's like that for most people. They go to university and they realise, oh, it's not a straight pipeline to grad schemes because, oh, I can barely get any. That was especially true for people probably 2 years younger than me because COVID hit. No one was hiring at that point. It was nuts. I still remember I applied for a job with Highways England. It took them over a year to tell me that they weren't going ahead with the job anymore because of COVID. It was 2022 by the point I got that email. I want to make that clear.
And you know what? I was one of the top students at LSE. My grades were like some of the best grades in the whole university.
Given Gary Stevenson is a known liar, I instinctivally don't believe this. However, this is probably actually true because you'd need to be pretty good academically to get fast-tracked to a trading desk. But again, Gary is a complete liar, so I'm still sceptical, even with the logic working.
You've read my book. I got my job by cheating in a f***ing card game.
Yeah.
Don't believe you. I just don't believe you.
There are so few people. I'm literally trying to think of a single person I know, other than me, that has significantly like transitioned upwards, like in terms of like where they land.
Yeah.
So I'm with Gary here. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be much upward movement for people below 30 even, to be honest. I'd even put myself in that position, along with other people my age. But I do just want to comment. This is why I hate going through Gary Stevenson videos. It takes him ages to make a basic point, and it's really annoying to go through. It is possible to go through them and edit out all the pauses. I left that completely unedited just to make the point. But yeah, I don't want to do that when I'm making reaction videos. He has a video editor, and his video editor leaves in all these pauses and gaps, and it makes it very hard to listen to. I don't understand why no one's told him that.
Yeah, I used to think, you know, when I was like, definitely, yeah, when you're younger, you're so right. When you're younger, you just don't want to be a fucking nihilistic because you want to have some hope in life. You want to think like, if I work hard, I can get ahead.
Yeah, that's what you're taught. The problem is you're not taught how to work, really. All you are really taught up until 21 is how to work in academic spaces. That is completely different to the real world. Like, working now in the real world for, God, how many years? 10 years now? A decade? Completely different to university. Completely different to school. I'd go as far as saying that the most stressed you probably ever will be in life is during your GCSEs and A-levels. Everything after that felt like a breeze to me. There's a reason that I'm able to make YouTube videos while I also work 40 hours a week. It's because work doesn't stress me out anywhere near the level I thought it would. And this whole thing of, oh, I've got to work, I've got to make all this money, I don't really know anyone who had that mindset, really. I can't think of that many people. Most people I know just coasted and either got into grad schemes, or if they didn't get into grad schemes, they ended up doing decent jobs anyway. The only people I know who desperately wanted to make more money, they mainly did it because they hated the job they were in, rather than because the pay was terrible. You know? I also know so many people that were living with their parents until 25 and beyond. It's so normal these days as well. Again, that takes the stress off as well. You don't feel like you have the pressure to make the money to afford rent, which is obviously higher than it should be for now. Because of various reasons I doubt either of these two are going to go into, but, you know. I don't know where this idea that every 24 and under year old is this highly competent, highly focused individual who thinks of nothing but how can I hustle, how can I make the most money ever. That is not my experience when I was 24 and under, or anyone I really know who was 24 and under, bar maybe a couple of exceptions. But even then, I don't think any of them were on the level Gary's talking about. So I don't know why Jimmy... Well, as I say, I do know why Jimmy's agreeing with him. I don't believe Jimmy was like this, but I think he's agreeing so he fits in.
But it was funny for me how my attitude flipped from being like kind of like successful now. Before I was super like anyone can make it. You just have to work hard. I was looking around. I was looking at all my friends who were like doing well and the ones who weren't. And I was like, the ones who aren't doing well, they're not working hard.
Yeah, in my experience, good choices. You don't even need to necessarily work hard. Work smart. You know, advice I would give everyone is don't overwork yourself. Don't work weekends if you don't have to. The only time I've ever really properly worked overtime was when I was working on American hours, and the only reason I did it is because they gave me extra money for it. Don't work outside your hours if you don't have to. Don't work over weekends if you don't have to. Only do it if you are guaranteed it will get you overtime, or if it will be paid off in some other way. I work extra days on weekends sometimes because I end up having a weekday off as a kind of trade-off. That's also fair. But your company is absolutely not going to give you any special appreciation or necessarily pay you back in the future for working extra days. You know, I've worked over Christmas before and I was told, oh, you're pretty much guaranteed bank holidays off, because I worked in support and you couldn't take bank holidays or Christmas off for that particular job. Never actually got that guaranteed bank holiday off. I still had to work them. So lesson learned from that, you know. Only do extra work if you can get in writing that it will be compensated properly. That would be my advice.
And then my attitude completely changed because I started to realise like the reason I got success ultimately really comes down to the fact that my parents own their house. I didn't have to move out of the house until I was like 25. So my parents, and I didn't go to uni. My parents just allowed me to dick around for like 8 years.
I just want to make sure you're getting this right. Jimmy the Giant, while saying, yeah, 24 and under, yeah, they're really driven. They're only thinking of money. It's absolutely crazy. I dicked around for 8 years. Oh, so you weren't really driven. So you didn't know many people who are absolutely driven, working their socks off to make as much money as possible. You've just contradicted yourself and Gary there, and you don't even realise. This is why I don't like these people. It's all a social club. It's all a social club. They don't have any interest in actually analysing anything. They will just say things that sound good and get them audiences. That's all they will do, and I hate that. It's kind of why I realise I'm kind of working with what I want to actually do, because I don't have a massive audience. And that's because I say an awful lot of things that people don't necessarily want to hear. I don't follow all these trends that get you money, because I don't want to be like that. I want to have integrity. That matters much more to me than turning this into a full-time job. I'd like this to be a full-time job, but that's only going to happen if people appreciate good analysis, I guess. Which might sound big-headed, but with the really, really nice comments I've been getting recently, I feel pretty comfortable saying it.
I was just allowed to. I told them, I'm going to make a clothing brand. I'm going to make a vegan food stand, and they didn't charge me rent, and so I'm already like all those factors already not having to so I didn't have to get a full-time job, didn't have to pay rent, so I have so much more time to take opportunities.
Yeah, but none of them worked. The only one that worked was going online and telling people what they already wanted to hear. Anyone can do that. You know, any rich kid can do that. I appreciate it with Gary. At least Gary is self-made in this. But yeah, you'll notice this with a lot of streamers as well. They'll all start off in their parents' bedroom and then make millions through, well, either through saying things people already want to hear, radicalising the youth, or in some cases going trans because people keep giving them money to feed that fetish. If you've not heard of Finister, that is basically that story for him. And it's just the same with Jimmy here. It's the same with Gary as well. They're not analysing or saying anything that's not already been said for 40 years. They're just saying it, but with their own particular brand on top of it. But I am kind of happy to learn that I am officially better than Jimmy the Giant, because I actually was charged rent while I was at home. Or at least I was once I got a job.
It's like meritocracy. I do sort of believe that meritocracy exists in the middle class.
Yeah, kinda. I don't know why it's specifically just for the middle class. I don't know why you're saying this to Gary of all people, who, let's be frank about this, you know, he wasn't terrible at Citibank. We're not hearing that he was awful at Citibank. We're hearing that he basically had a bit of a mental breakdown after a few years there. But there is absolutely no doubt that he earned his money there. So that is meritocratic. He's a social mobility success story, and for some reason they're criticising that.
Yeah. If you're in a position where you have some comfort and you haven't got to jump into some life commitment at the age of 18 of some job because you need to make rent, you can have like 6-7 years to figure shit out, take chances, and it's a game of probability. Like, the more chances you take, one of them will pop.
Yours just happened to be a pretty horrendous YouTube channel, yeah. That wasn't what happened to me. I had to get a real job.
And for me, it worked out. By the end of it, I'd gone and done a lot of hard work, but the reason being I could do that is because I had all that extra free time that most people didn't have.
I mean, he's saying all this. I'm failing to actually see the problem. Like, yeah, your parents weren't great and didn't instill the correct lessons in you. Yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, listen, my mum, while I wasn't doing much at home, one of her things was, why don't you start a business? My main reason, I have absolutely no idea how I would even do that, and I have no business ideas. I now have quite a bit of experience in the private sector. I've been working for 10 years. These ideas come flooding. It's kind of sad that Jimmy never really had that opportunity.
The reason my YouTube career popped off was because I got furloughed for 2 months as one of my videos went viral. So I had two months just to work on YouTube videos.
Yeah, the furlough scheme is one of the absolute worst things I think I've ever seen in my life. And learning that Jimmy the Giant took off because of the furlough scheme, yeah, you're paying all that money back plus extra as far as I care. In fact, I just decided to go through Jimmy the Giant's YouTube videos. What the hell happened to him? He used to do all these videos on sports and free running and things like that, and all of a sudden he makes nothing but leftist nonsense now. What the hell happened? Oh, I think I've worked it out. Like, seriously, just having a look through his backlog, he only really started this, I guess you could call it a leftist push, only this year. Well, last year. Only last year, really. It's very strange. Because pretty much everything below this seems like his videos are just giving a general explanation of parts of British culture or even American culture. I mean, the brutal evolution of British gang culture, that seems like one that could be fair, but then it's surrounded by the man who killed British High Street, and I don't know what that's going to be about. But then he just gets to how I escaped the alt-right pipeline. For some reason, Nigel Farage is on that, whatever. Then it's I hate Thatcher. Then it's how the left failed young men. It's almost, it's like he turned a few months ago. It's like he pivoted toward the left, and I imagine it got him a load of donations, and so he's just ridden that ever since. I mean, I'm not being funny. Pretty much every thumbnail from his last 10 videos has Nigel Farage in it somewhere. Not even joking. But yeah, he pivots to this, and then a few months later, literally a few months later, he's on Gary's Economics and making it big in leftist circles. Wonder if he's going to change his mind.
Social mobility exists at a very zoomed in scale. So what I mean is, if you take two people from the same financial background, if one of them works really, really, really hard and studies really, really hard, and the other one, sits around smoking weed, most chances this guy will end up richer than that guy.
Hang on, no, you left it. You're not supposed to admit that meritocracy exists. I do love it though. Push comes to shove, when they look at individual cases, they instinctively understand, meritocracy is largely actually true in Britain. Absolutely hilarious that they've just admitted that. But I assume what they're going to say next is, oh, well, that's the case there, but you get two rich people and they'll both just probably end up rich.
But if there's a kid 10 minutes down in a nice neighbourhood who's from a much richer family, that kid can sit around and smoke weed. You'll never catch him.
Yeah.
You'll never catch him.
He'll end up in market.
What I mean is so it is true for people, and then what that means is then social mobility seems real.
So your example, I love how the example goes to, if that kid from a richer family smokes weed, he'll never go to prison for it. Possibly true, but that's not what social mobility is about, really. If he doesn't work, will he become a pauper? No, probably not, because he'll be subsidised by his family. Okay, fair enough. What happens when his family die and he wastes all the inheritance? What happens then? Oh, frankly, yeah, that's when he'll fail. And you can say, oh, that's not fair and all that, but no, that actually means on the larger scale, on the longer timeline, meritocracy once again is working. There's a reason 90% of our millionaires are self-made. That's not even a joke, by the way. I was shocked at that statistic. Britain's self-made billionaires and millionaires make up more than 90% of the country's 2018 rich list. 90% of the rich lists, so the richest 100 people, are self-made millionaires and billionaires. If you want proof that social mobility is working, that is your proof. There shouldn't be any billionaires or millionaires. Why not? These people have earned it. If they're self-made, by definition, they have earned it. There's not this whole family generational wealth thing anymore. It doesn't really exist. Jimmy the Giant's right. You probably do have more opportunity if you are from a richer family, sure. But if you've earned your way up and not just got the intergenerational wealth, what's your issue with that? Oh, other people might not have the same opportunity. Well, I guess welcome to the real world. What's the best thing you can do for that? Help them with their education, get them into universities, get them on grad schemes, get them into trades, help them. If they have an idea and want to be an entrepreneur, maybe don't tax them out of that dream. That would be my advice. In fact, even reading on, out of 1,000 people that made up the rich list, 94% were self-made entrepreneurs. That's over 940 of them. Or more specifically, the very lowest that can be is 935. I can't tell you how... that is proof that social mobility is just working. Opportunity be damned, who cares? Really, really stupid people who only care that millionaires and billionaires exist. But if you get into that point of the conversation, as far as I care, you've got nothing to add. You don't understand the way the world works if you have to pivot to, oh, billionaires and millionaires exist. Who cares? Really, who cares? You know, if people really cared, nobody would use Amazon. Everyone uses Amazon. People like billionaires.
Yeah. Because people compare themselves to people on the same level.
What is social mobility if it is not doing better than your peers who are from the same social economic background? I mean, again, we're talking about Gary, who made millions, allegedly, from trading with Citibank. And somehow he's trying to claim that social mobility isn't working. Again, he was fast-tracked onto it. I would not be shocked if him coming from a less well-off background helped him along the way there. Do I care if he was good at the job? No, not really. I care really now that he's, in a way, trying to pull the ladder up behind him. I would not be shocked if Gary Stevenson counts as a millionaire. I wouldn't be shocked at all. Does he consider himself part of the people that need to pay the 2% wealth tax? I highly doubt it.
Yeah, my dad, he's a little bit reformy.
Good on him. It's all I can say. He understands the issues with the UK then. Go on then. Let's hear why that's a bad thing.
They all are. They all are.
There's a lot of people supporting reform, right? Like, so we shouldn't like mock it, right?
Very, very funny take back there. Oh, they're serious. If we mock them, they're not going to come to our side. That is what's going through his mind there. This is the problem that the leftists have at the moment. They are losing their grip on cultural, the cultural zeitgeist. And if these people lose the grip on that, they can't sell their books anymore. That's all this comes down to, by the way. These people are grifters. You need to understand that. They are nothing but grifters.
My dad was a bit like that. Yeah. And he was like, he was this kind of, we just work hard, we get our head down.
Yeah, man, he instilled those values into you, and look at you now. You made it to Citibank. You had a bit of a mental breakdown, because I imagine it's not the easiest job in the world. Very high stress, I imagine. I'm not going to take it away from him. You work hard on the grift. I'm not going to lie here. You do an awful lot of videos, like a few a week. You're going to all these talks and interviews, writing books. Like, you clearly still work hard for your grift. I can't take that away from you. My main issue is that you don't work hard on finding out if you're actually correct or not, on actually analysing your position to see what the best way forward is. You just say things. Your analysis goes as far as to what will sell me more books, what will get me more views. That's all you really care about. And that is blindingly obvious to anyone who has any sort of a brain on them.
We don't like point fingers. We don't look at the rich. And
that's that Thatcher era. That comes off the back.
He went, and he was like big Thatcher fan.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of working class Thatcher fans. I'm not joking about that. They really liked Thatcher because she gave them the opportunity to actually make it out of, well, being either destitute or poor. And this is something that a lot of leftists don't understand. A lot of, especially men, a lot of men do not just want to be given free handouts. They want to feel competent. What's the best way to do that? Work their way up and buy a house or rent a house, depending what their preference is, have a family, feel like they are useful to someone. That is what they want. You don't feel that way when you have the state giving you money. The state is there to give you security, but men want to be the provider of their own security generally. That is an absolute truth that the leftists cannot face at all. Having a big state that is there to give you security and provide for you, frankly, that's more of a feminine outlook on life and what the state should be. And that's why quite a few men are going absolutely nuts and moving over to reform, because they are very much the side of, actually, you should probably work hard, and hell, we may even make self-defense legal, who knows? Especially because you can't rely on the police to actually do their job and protect society, put prisoners in jail. There's so many stories of people being robbed on the street and the police do absolutely nothing about it, despite the fact they have the name and address of the person who robbed them. Of course people are getting mad. Of course people are moving to reform. Is it any shock? And that's why they have to take them seriously now, because reform are pointing out all the issues in the UK, and they don't want to face them. Puts them in this really interesting position.
And he probably is the generation that won off.
Yeah, he was like 21, 22 when Thatcher came in, and they thought it was like cool and sexy, whatever.
Yeah.
But,
well, yeah, I mean, you got to bear in mind what was happening in 1978 or 9, whichever the Winter of Discontent was. I think it was 78. Yeah. You got to bear in mind as well that they had lived through the 3-day week where they'd only have 3 days worth of electricity. You could only go to work for 3 days of the week, and that was making people poorer. Why was that? Because the unions were absolutely mental. If you worked in a factory or something like that, you were forced to join a union. Then when you had to vote, you couldn't have a secret ballot. It was all done with hands up in this big hall. You went against the union's position, you'd probably be beat up. Unironically, bodies started piling up in the streets in the Winter of Discontent. Rubbish was not collected. People felt like they were living in a completely failed state. That's why they voted Thatcher. Thatcher gets in and then wins the Falklands War. She never lost an election for a reason. She got kicked out of her party because a load of wets were still in the Tory party, and she should have got rid of them. And she should have done more against the unions, frankly. And a lot of people seem to be realising that. I'm not going to lie. People do not like the train unions unless they're in them these days. Why? Because nobody actually believes that a train driver should be earning more than a doctor.
He went for a walk around the area he grew up with my mum. They're from South London. And they walked around Balham. And they saw in an estate agent's window a house on the street my dad grew up cost more than £1 million.
Wow, London house prices have gone absolutely insane. Wonder why that is. Oh, let's have a look at the population statistics. They grow absolutely massively up to World War II because we massively industrialised over the Victorian period and obviously into World War II. Post-World War II, obviously you have waves of deindustrialisation and commuter towns start being built around the area. In places like Guildford and Surrey and other areas outside of London where you can get a train in from an hour out and it's perfectly fine. Hell, people I know live outside of London to commute in. That's still quite popular today. But as you can see, despite all that happening, you get around to the time of the 2000s, just shoots up. Goes from 6.5 million-ish in 1981, starts going up bit by bit, an extra 600,000 over 2 decades, but then the next 2 decades, it goes up by over 1.5 million people. And that, by the way, is official statistics. We don't know how many illegal people are there that are completely undocumented and not in the official statistics. Recent estimates have shown that it's about 1 in 12 people. That means you need to add about a 12th onto that statistic, meaning it's actually closer to 9.5 million. Now, to be fair, we don't know how many illegal people were in the country from the 80s to the 2000s. However, there's no way it was 1 in 12. Point being, why is this area of South London all of a sudden full of millionaires' homes? Because population just exploded. Why did it explode? I don't know. Why don't you tell me, Gary? Why don't you tell me why that house price is so ridiculous?
And I think that's when he realised, well, it can't work.
Yeah.
It's good. How can social mobility exist when the amount of money that I need to give my kids the life that my dad gave me, his dad was a bus conductor, right? is completely impossible to get no matter how hard I work.
I mean, Gary's saying this while he's in his own home that he literally owns, so his dad's actually succeeded there. However, there's also just this other point of, well, you don't have to move to a £1.2 million house in London. People I know who move to London, they go there, they rent, they climb the corporate ladder, get higher in their career, and then they try and move back to a really, really decent job that they were actually qualified for, back where they lived. You know, back to Manchester. I know quite a few people that have moved back to Manchester after having worked in London for a decade. Partly because they get priced out of there, but also because they want to be near family. So, you know, realistically, what's the average pipeline for a worker, or a qualified worker, I should say, these days? Well, it's to move to London for a few years and then try and move out. That's basically it. But the question needs to be asked as to, well, why are house prices so expensive in London? Basic answer, mass immigration. Leftist answer, it's BlackRock. Which I always need to point out, BlackRock buy estates that get turned into flats, which actually help bring down the house prices, so you can't really blame BlackRock for that.
Like, that's the thing, this is the thing when house prices become £1 million a house, £2 million a house, that means that social mobility can only exist at a zoomed in level.
Well, Gary, who is buying those houses? That needs to be a question that you actually answer. You can't just say these houses are going for £1.5 million and say social mobility just stops there. No, what happens is people just move to where the houses are cheaper. I moved to Wales because the houses were cheaper, because I wanted to put my money into other things, not just putting it all into a house and not being able to afford anything.
You know, very, very few people will ever make the amount of money I made. I will never even be able to touch these guys, regardless of what they do.
He's talking about other people that went to LSE, and it's just wrong. If he was the best trader, if he was actually the best trader at Citibank, he would be making more than them. And again, this is why the politics of envy is always pointed at people like this. Why do you even care? Why do you care if you're making more than someone else? I mean, he said, all you can really do with social mobility is compare yourself to other people from your own social class. But I start doing it to other people and I get really jealous and want a wealth tax on everyone. Yeah, I wonder why you don't consider yourself to be worthy of that wealth tax, Mr. Wealthy Gary Stevenson.
And that's what it means when house prices are like that.
What, do you think all these richer people than you are just buying up every house that they can afford? Is that what you think's happening here? Because generally that's not happening. Few people have a second home. Those that do, it's typically a holiday rental somewhere. Or if it's not for holiday, it's for work, you know. MPs especially, they typically have, well, to be fair, they usually rent. But sometimes they have second homes, and a lot of the time it's one in the constituency, one in London. And fully enough, they can write that off as expenses anyway, but anyway. The point I'm trying to make is that houses in London aren't £1.2 million when they were, 50 pence in the 80s, because there are rich people all over the place in Britain that you went to university with. That's not what's happening. It's also not particularly BlackRock, because BlackRock, if they are buying up houses, it's to turn them into apartments, which is actually better for the housing market. No, the reason is that frankly, especially, it's a really big issue in London. The reason is that it's absolutely chock full of immigrants. And then not only that, but they managed to basically get fast-tracked onto social housing in zone like 2 or 3, where house prices are worth millions, and then they don't do much because they're basically on benefits. I can't remember the tweet, but someone basically made the point that if you're in a if you're socially housed in Britain and you've not managed to get out of it, you've basically had the biggest advantage that is ever known to man, especially in London where all the opportunity is, and yet you're still in social housing. No, the issue is you. It's a skill issue. You haven't bothered to try and get out of there, and why would you? You're getting stuff for free, or at least massively subsidised. And it also doesn't help that by law, whenever you make any sort of development, you have to reserve a certain amount of places for social homes. And it's just ruining incentives. It's getting useless people in there who don't work, and because of that, it's completely screwing up the housing market, and people that do actually want to work, they have to make millions to actually get a house in zone 2 or 3. It's nuts. Is Gary Economics going to go into any of that? Of course he isn't. He's going to blame BlackRock for making even more apartments.
Yeah, what you were saying, and this is something I've sort of thought about a lot, is like the separation of, how would you word it, like what can be true on an individual level doesn't necessarily ring true for a big group.
Yeah, fine. Where are you going with this? What's this got to do with the housing market that we were just on?
So like, on an individual level, and this is what I say, if I was to talk to a friend and be like, and they would, or like some young 18-year-old lad and he wanted life advice, I would tell him all the libertarian, go pull yourself up, go to the gym. I would tell him all that shit.
Yeah. Okay, so apparently Jimmy the Giant's still a bit of a Jordan Peterson fanboy, so okay.
But I would be insane to think that everyone in society, that advice even works for everyone.
The advice does work for everyone. Of course it works for everyone. There is basically nothing... there's probably exceptions, I don't really care. There is basically nothing in the UK that stops anyone from succeeding. If anyone is failing at life, they will try and externalise their own problems. That's what happens here. That is what happens. And I'm fed up of hearing that it's the government or the system keeping them back. That's only really true when it comes to middle class people going any further up, you know, entrepreneurs making it to any sort of big business. That's where the genuine dragback is. As I said before, there's thousands of people in Zone 2 social housing in London and they don't get anywhere. How is that? How are they being dragged down by being given some of the best housing in Britain? It doesn't make sense.
On an individual level, you can probably improve your life slightly. Like,
of all people he's saying this to, he's saying it to Gary. He's saying it to Gary's economics. How can you say that with a straight face? Oh, you might be able to improve it slightly, but it's not very likely. And yet here's Gary, who's probably a millionaire, but is embarrassed about it.
So on an individual level, while it is true, if you were to work harder, probably you improve your life fractionally.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest advice on a macro level.
What do you think a macro level of society is? Do you think things randomly change for individuals if all of a sudden they're part of society? No, of course it doesn't. So how can it be bad advice for society at large? What is stopping people doing better in life? Probably the fact that half of all their money goes to the government and that money is largely wasted. It's probably something to do with that. They're ever going to go into that? No, they're going to say that, in fact, taxes need to be higher. We need higher taxes. Oh, let's look at a time when we had massive taxes and a lot of money was being wasted. Wow, the 70s. Nuts. What did we get from that? Thatcher, what happened then? Literally everyone's lives improved. People who were die-in-the-wool socialist or unionists, trade unionists to be specific, they hated it. Why? Because their strong arm against the country was completely lifted. And they've been on the back foot mostly ever since, but obviously Tories these days, they don't want to fight him. And they didn't for 14 years, and now we're in a mess where they're in charge, and oh, everything got worse. Nuts. Absolutely amazing. Who saw that coming? Anyone who knows any history of the 20th century.
I want to be really clear. I ain't telling nobody don't work hard.
No, yeah.
And I never said...
That's where the left gets a bit
I never
lost,
said to anybody don't work hard, and I'm not against making money. Like, I've been poor, you know, and I ain't going to tell no, you know.
Oh, the advice is absolutely useless and it'll only improve your life ever so slightly. Oh, but still do it though. You know, I'm not telling you don't. Do you know why they're having to do this? Because this is effectively reforming the right wing's message. And it's worked for years. And the problem we have now is that, well, what's stopping people improving even more? Well, the fact that there's been a left-wing zeitgeist for years, decades at this point, and it's stopping people from actually being entrepreneurs, stopping new businesses from actually being lifted up like they probably should be. You know, especially in Britain, where an awful lot of, frankly, new businesses probably do require quite a lot of energy, especially if they're making something, and energy prices are through the roof. Highest they've ever been. What's their answer to that? Oh, just tax the rich even more, put it into wind farms, it'll all be fine. No, we've been doing that for years. It's not worked. You need to change the record. And they keep trying to, but they can't go too far because then they'll lose their grift. It's so funny to watch. Just to really nail the point here, what they've effectively said here is, oh, Jordan Peterson's really bad and the advice is really cringe, but we're still going to give it. just lean into it. It's fine. The right wing's right sometimes. Don't worry about it.
Anybody out there, and I worked fucking hard. Yeah. I worked hard to get my job, and I worked hard in my job, and I worked hard to make money, and I'm supportive of all these things. But
it's all cringe advice, isn't it? It's crazy. It's crazy how that's your opinion.
And this is a big thing which I think about a lot nowadays, is like, I also understand that class interests exist.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where very rapidly the middle class is losing to these super rich.
Mm-hmm. Nah, nonsense. That's not what the middle class generally think. It's not what the middle class think at all, unless they're in a trade union. It's madness that he's saying this. What the middle class generally want, especially for their kids, is just to have their kids in at least a similar, if not better position than them. They don't necessarily want them to move up a class, whatever that means. They want them to be able to make businesses. They want them to be able to have a job and then actually afford a house. They do want that. they just, if you're a mad Lib Dem, you just have all the wrong answers for that because you care more about being in the social club of aren't immigrants great and oh no, let's not build and ruin our countryside, both of which are total nonsense positions, by the way. There's a massive issue with Marxist class analysis. You get to it on any sort of individual level, the whole thing breaks down. You know, it's why they've had to have so many different types of it, Stalinism, Leninism, Maoism, because it just turns out that it's all nonsense and they keep having to redefine it. Oh, the workers will rise up. Oh, they didn't. Okay, maybe farmers will do it. Okay, they didn't. They hated it. You know, oh, what about Britain? How do they do it? Oh, well, we have to actually do it from a middle class perspective. Oh, they did it and now they're regretting it. They're just... We're at a point where I think we're within a decade of the middle class basically openly saying, yeah, we were wrong for a century. If you can even put this on a societal level or a class level. I don't think you can. I just totally outright reject Marxism. I think there's basically nothing worthy that we can learn from it. And I think we're quite close to actually getting rid of it for good, at least in the West. But, well, I suppose you'll always have envious people who want to overthrow everything. But luckily there's enough normal people out there who are trying to vote for, well, normalcy, reform and Trump. That's all I have to say on that.
And on an individual basis, these rich guys will win.
Yeah.
They will win. Like, you cannot compete with these guys. They're too rich. They will win. And over time, that wealth will pass out of your class and into their class.
Yeah, but again, he's saying that, oh, you won't move into their class. How do you explain 94% of the Sunday Times rich list of being people who have literally moved to the millionaire-billionaire class? How do you explain that? Oh, all our wealth's just moving up to these billionaires. Yeah, but the thing is that as more wealth is created, that doesn't particularly matter. And to be honest with you, as more wealth is created, the distribution of that wealth in terms of percentages, it stays pretty stagnant. You know, there's a reason that the Gini coefficient, which is the coefficient that says how equal a place is, really hasn't changed since it started. And it's quite ironic. The more left-wing a government we get in, the worse that Gini coefficient gets. It's kind of weird. The market actually does kind of redistribute itself when you have a free market economy, because people that work hard and they'll end up moving up social class and what have you. You have decent mobility. You know, this happened with kids in workhouses. They'd eventually become foremen if they stay there. If not, they move out, find another job, find an apprenticeship, whatever. Like, there was social mobility, and it's ridiculous to say otherwise. Generational wealth, especially in the 20th century, it's just not a thing. It just doesn't really exist anymore. I suppose in the 19th century you had lords who would very much try and keep it all within the family. Like, that is absolutely true, there's no doubt about that. But when it came to the middle classes, people were moving between classes all the time. You know, people would lose all their money through bad business decisions. They'd, you know, have to end up working again. It happened all the time, and it's ridiculous to try and claim otherwise.
And because you can't win on the battle of money, you have to play the game of politics. You just have to. You have to play the game of politics. If you don't play that game, you're going to lose.
Lose what? This is why there are so many working class Thatcherites, by the way, because they don't buy this. They know too many people who, during Thatcher's time, they ended up with more money, they ended up buying their council house, or even not buying their council house and buying a non-right to buy home. They ended up with a really decent family and plenty of money, and now they've retired quite well, and they're quite well off. But this will absolutely be... This will be Gary Stevenson's dad. I have no doubt about it. It's no wonder that they're like Maggie Thatcher. If you voted Maggie Thatcher and then over the 80s, literally everyone who knows life's improves, what are you going to think? Oh, the left was right? No, of course you're not. Maybe you need to learn something off your dad, rather than just learning everything from the London School of Economics.
But how do we communicate to people that you have to do both?
Well, you have to end up as Reform, where you have a really simple story of, these governments have all been left-wing for like 2 decades. It's absolutely ruined your chance of a decent life and a secure home. Vote for us and we'll get rid of all this nonsense you've been noticing. Or you have to be left-wing, tell a really complex story of, oh yeah, you see all this social mobility that you've definitely seen in your life? Basically doesn't exist on a macro level, even though it does. Oh, not only that, it's actually BlackRock, who, I know that you've not seen them actually buy any homes in your anecdotes, or you've seen places where they have been buying up homes, but anyway, they're the reason that house prices are so high. Oh, ignore all the immigrants that you're seeing. Ignore the fact that London is practically unrecognisable from 10 years ago. Ignore all that. No, it's definitely BlackRock. Are they building apartments? Oh, just ignore that. They want to take your home and make it impossible for you to own it. And it's, you know, in America, from what I can tell. They are doing that in areas. It's not really happening over in Britain, though. They're hardly buying homes here. The bigger issue that Aaron Bastani keeps going on about, if you can call it an issue, is that they're buying a load of, well, business or commercial buildings, which, frankly, they're already owned by big, massive financial corporations anyway. So, you know, I don't want BlackRock to be a monopoly, sure, but if it's going from the hands of one corporation to another, nobody cares. But they have to go on about just this nonsense. And as I say, it's a really difficult story to sell. And the only people really that are buying it are women, because it massively advantages women, because it's in line with feminism, which only really helps women. Doesn't help men as much as they've tried to lie about it. It's why feminism's basically dead at this point. Their lies they've been debunked too much. Nobody believes it. And young men obviously are moving over to Reform for that. You know, I saw on Twitter the other day there was a Reform promotional video going about, and some Tory woman said, "Oh, don't see a single woman in this." And basically everyone said, "Just shut up. Shut up. Nobody cares. It's not 2014 anymore." As far as I'm concerned, the zeitgeist for feminism is basically over. We're in a weird limbo part of the clown decade where we are transitioning from the worst to the better, but it's happening in stages, it's happening in different areas, and it's got to the point where literally the left are having to say, we're losing young men and we don't really realise why. And I don't think they ever will. And basically the reason they're losing them is because they have to lie to them, and young men are they've had enough of being lied to. That's basically it.
In the sense that you have to work hard, and you have to save your money, you have to try and invest, you have to do all these things. But if you don't play that political game on the same team as that guy that lives next door to you, the same team as the guy in your football team, as the same team as like the people you go to school with, as the same team as
That's why
if you don't play that political game, you have to do both.
Hilarious that he said that. The problem you're running into is that all these people are on the same team. They're moving over to Reform, by and large. They are. The problem you have is that when you say, oh, you need to be on the same team as the guy who's next door to you, well, for years you've not been on any team because you've not really been interested. It feels like everyone's been against you. Boom, Reform comes out. Oh, by the way, we're actually on your side. They join them. They're not going to join you. They're not going to join the Greens. They're not going to join Labour. Why would they join Labour? When Labour got in, basically all they did was try and blame everything on the Tories and then do everything the Tories did but put the foot down on the accelerator. That's what it looks like to people. And then Farage comes about and he's actually personable. He seems like a real person. I keep describing him as a friendly uncle. And that's generally, I imagine, how people under the age of 25 would see him. Boys especially, as I say. You know, the girls, and you can say don't generalise, but let's be real. Boys and girls, in terms of their opinions, they have massively split in Gen Z. That is absolutely true. And the girls, they will do anything for the left-wing cause because it advantages them. It doesn't advantage boys, so they've moved to Reform, where the story is, as I say, left-wingers, they're taking everything off you and wasting all your money. We think you're better off saving your own money so that you can spend it on what you want. Problem with the left-wing is that, you know, they say, oh yeah, you can save up and become a millionaire. As soon as that happens, we're taking it all, though. Why would you join the team that says, yeah, you got to do all these right-wing things, but then when you actually do these right-wing things, you got to do the left-wing thing and effectively have charity forced upon you, and you have to give all this money to, you know, all these BAME charities, to Stonewall, to the gay charities, all this stuff for feminism as well. Why would they join that team and not join the one that says, oh, you know, we'll need it for, like, roads and stuff like that, but by and large, do whatever you want with your money. Why would you not join that team? How does that not sound like one of the most masculine things ever? Work hard in your life, make money, do what you want with that money, do what you see fit. That is the most masculine thing I can think of, and they're saying, yeah, but if they're just team players, they'll move left wing. No, the team players on the right, the team players in Young Boys, they're all moving right. You're screwed. You don't have an answer to this, because your answer has effectively been tried for 2 decades. As much as you hate the Tories and their rhetoric was all nonsense. And this is another reason why they were never politically engaged, because they just knew they were lying instinctively. And now they've got Farage, who nobody feels like is lying. As much as left-wingers try and say that he lies, they react to him as if he's telling the truth. And again, that is something that is not going to help you win any elections.
I think that is where the right does really well with the young male demographic, is because it offers a empowering message, albeit stupid, like to tell young people they can somehow, you know, become a billionaire. It's like
94% of the Sunday Times rich list self-made. What do you mean it's stupid? It is the norm. It is overwhelmingly the norm. It's weird to have generational wealth. Don't say it's stupid if you've not looked into it. This is what I mean. They're just grifters. They don't understand a damn thing they're talking about. They have an audience. They want to keep it. That is all this has been about. And it's so blatant, it's embarrassing at this point.
It's outrageous. But to a young person who has no life experience and no understanding of like complicated systems, like power structures and how they affect you, an optimistic message will always sell to a good, especially young men who are being told they need to go and provide and need to become powerful and strong, and we idolize that.
Yeah.
That's always going to win against this nihilistic realism, but this nihilistic, this pessimistic, sad attitude that I guess is what the left, because we are more realistic and we understand, like, the average person doesn't really have a chance.
I love it. It's like a mental patient having to convince himself of his own worldview. I'm honestly, it's nuts that he's able to say this. Again, though, this is how I can tell they're lying. Oh, we've got a totally realistic outlook on life, but we're giving them this nihilistic thing of, oh, they're being screwed over at the moment. Reform's message is they are being screwed over at the moment, and we want to help you not be screwed over anymore. That's their message. You're trying to give them the same one. You just have to lie about everything to sell it. And because you have to lie about everything, it's a very, very hard story to actually keep on track. Reform don't have to lie. I was about to say at all. I'm not going to go that far. They're probably lying about some things. They're politicians, for God's sake. But every day, you'll see them on Twitter, you'll see them on the mainstream news. They will point at something and they will say, this is happening, we want it to stop. Left-wingers will just say, you know, they'll be a bit like led by donkeys. They'll have to throw out all of this nonsense about, oh, look at Nigel Farage. He's got 9 jobs while at Parliament, don't you know? And people don't care. It's like, oh, he's corrupt. Why? Oh, because he's a brand ambassador for something. Or they're happy to pay him to promote, to effectively be an advertiser. Who cares? Honestly, who cares? There's a video that some trade union did trying to go around Clacton, trying to smear Farage, and I might go through it, but effectively, you can fact check the whole video, and it's all just nonsense. They'll be like, did you know he has 9 jobs? Did you know that makes him corrupt? It's like, no, it doesn't. Pretty much everyone in Parliament has a second job, or has money coming in from some sort of donator. Do you know how you find out? You find out on the official Parliament website, because it all gets written down somewhere. But all they can do is lie about the other side. And it's really funny how he's had to self-report and say, we don't have a positive message. Why don't you have a positive message? Because even if it's real, how can you not have a positive message if you say we know the problem and know how to improve it? How can't that be a positive message? Reason, because you know you're lying.
So I think we need to find like a really empowering message to give to people. And I think I try and analyze, like, what did they do in like the 1920s and like when you had the work, like the labour movements. They were empowered. Like, they weren't pussies. They weren't going, man, this sucks. They were like, no, we're going to take down the fucking, I mean, they were like, some of them were wild communists, but they were like, we're going to take down the bourgeois, blah, blah, blah.
How are you in any realistic sense different to these mad communists? It's interesting that saying out loud, I am a communist, is still seen as icky to leftists, when at the end of the day, that's all they basically are. Again, you've gone through how working hard can actually make you quite well off. Again, you are literally in Gary's house that he owns at the moment. And it's a pretty decent place, a clean place. You can see in the background he's got plenty of utilities and what have you. He's not poor. He doesn't need a dual income for that. As far as I'm aware, he doesn't have a girlfriend or wife. And I'm basically being told by these two that, oh, working hard only gets you so far. Apparently working hard, in Gary's case, gets you on a single income household. I can't tell you how rare that is nowadays. Jimmy the Giant as well, yeah, he had a job that I assume he wasn't particularly happy in. Oh, he gets quite lucky with a viral video and then manages to launch a YouTube career. Oh, I worked really hard for that. Oh, yeah, but working hard only gets you so far. Gets you to a point where you have a dream job and you're relatively comfortable on one income. What? And you're trying to tell people it doesn't work. It only gets you so far. Gets you into a position where basically everyone is envious. I'm envious. I'm just going to be honest about that. But I know for a fact that I'm not in that position because of my own decisions, and, you know, partially probably due to the fact that, you know, I edit these videos quite lazily. They're effectively streams of consciousness with a little bit of extra effort put in to actually put images on screen and stuff like that. But it's basic stuff. But I need to streamline this because I have an actual job I put all my effort into, and I'm doing pretty well there. It's put me above the median income bracket, which, you know, I'm top half by the time I'm 30. Pretty happy with that. And I mean median for 30 to 35-year-olds. Like my age, I'm in the top 60%, I think. And that's done through hard work and stuff like that. But this is the thing. I'm above average, right? I'm still only just about affording a house in Wales. That's how bad things are. And you've got to answer, why are things like that happening? Well, immigration largely. Also, everyone's taxed up to the eyeballs. You know, I saw another tweet the other day. Effectively, inflation's got so out of hand that we're actually basically being robbed by it. Not even just by inflation directly, which is just an indirect tax, but also by the fact that all the thresholds haven't changed for years. When the £12,500 threshold for personal allowance, so before you actually pay any income tax, that stayed the same for like a decade. And if you actually put it into today's money, it should be something like 18 grand or something like that. Like, that is how much we're being robbed. We're paying tax on about £6,000 that we probably shouldn't be paying tax on when it comes to income. Yet they're not touching it. And Labour said, oh, we're keeping that where it is, but we're going to move it in 4 years' time. And everyone cheered. It's like that should have been moved 2 years ago, but they can't do it because they keep having to pay for all this ridiculous stuff like furlough and debts from when we did lockdown and didn't have an economy for a year and a half. And here's Reform saying, yeah, we're paying for all this stuff we probably didn't actually have to pay for. It's coming from you. You're basically being robbed by the state. When we get in, we're going to cut all that down, cut it all back, make it so that they're not getting in your way, and so that you can grow a business and actually become rich. And here you are saying, oh, if you become rich, we're going to tax you up to the eyeballs even more. Like, no wonder you don't have a positive message. There's nothing to strive towards apart from, oh, we'll take more money off you so that it can be wasted. Great.
But they felt like they were having a battle against the powerful. And
I completely forgot he was talking about the labour movements of the 1920s. Well, it's actually quite funny how the Labour Party actually first gained power. They actually were largely with the free marketeers. In fact, I believe Labour's first government actually had a budget that was actually largely similar to what the Liberal Party had at the time. The Liberal Party at the time, by the way, massive free traders, massive for economic liberalisation, but obviously now Labour's gone fully socialist. Labour actually split, I believe, after that government with the Independent Labour Party and the National Labour Party, something like that. And that was really a split between the free traders and the socialists, and obviously the socialist side got absolutely massive because trade unionists are socialists because they have no idea how economics works. They're basically there to be a mafia. That's all they are. That's why I want them completely destroyed, especially public sector ones. And this is the thing, it's like, why were they so strong? Well, because they were pretty open about just wanting money. What do trade unions want now? Oh, we want to do it to, well, I suppose for the same thing, but obviously after you have a century of that, people get wise to it. And people generally try and avoid voting for it. Why did Labour get in this time? Because the right wing completely collapsed because they went too left wing with the Tories. Now why Reform rising up? Because people don't want any trade union in charge anymore. It's so simple.
we can sell that message. Like, you can talk about how, like, we will rise, we will win, and we will fight these people.
Yeah, the problem is that you can only really do that with people who are within trade unions, or people who only learn everything from university because they're captured by socialists. You teach a fair and genuinely balanced view of history, nobody would be a socialist. Absolutely nobody. And this is the problem, they have to lie about everything. As basically everything that's been talked about in this video is a lie as well. It is pretty nuts to me though that they've kind of nailed that, yeah, to actually win you have to have positive messages, and they're struggling to actually come up with one. I'll just go back to the 1920s, yeah, we can be billionaires. Oh, the problem is that that's been the message for absolutely years, decades, probably centuries actually, and it's got them nowhere. The results are all terrible. People kind of realise that even with all the gaslighting, so you've got absolutely no chance, which I love to see.
A young lad needs to get behind something. A young lad doesn't want to sit there and be like, man, this sucks, we're never going to get anywhere. We need to have like a battle and a fight.
Young lads have been given the option to join that fight for decades. Labour has been there, Greens have been there, even Lib Dems have been there to an extent. They've not joined them. They've been politically disengaged. Why? Because your message has been god-awful. Your message is, if you do well, we will tax you to high heaven. And if you're not doing well, we will just give you stuff for free. Reforms is you're going to get work and any type of work, otherwise you're going to be screwed. That is actually a mindset that gets boys into a position of, fine, I'll just get any job I can then. It's what happened to me. When I found out I either have to get a job or I will just keep losing money to rent, I was like, oh, I'm just going to have to get a job then. And it worked. It actually worked, and I felt better for having a job for it. I hated the job, don't get me wrong, but that then in turn was like, well, I can't leave this job unless I have something else lined up. So I got something else lined up, and I got there. You know, I work 60 hours a week, as I said. It works. The leftist vision for men is, yeah, we're going to make sure that you don't really have to do anything. It's not a winning message to men.
And it might be dumb, it might be really stupid, but I think that's how we have to frame stuff, is this is a big battle that we can win, but we have to unite and like fight against it.
Yeah, again, another problem you have is that you have been winning that battle for decades. Everyone knows it and they're not buying it. What do you do about that?
And I think a lot of it is about rhetoric. Like, I'm quite a believer in rhetoric. Like, I think you need strong, powerful ideas that motivate people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're on a YouTube channel. Why are you failing to push that? Oh, because you have no idea how the world works. Again, I went through his Americanization of Britain video. He probably made about 2 points that I largely agreed with. One, we had an awful lot of American TV that influenced our generation. Fine. And largely British and American corporations worked kind of the same. But again, as I had to make the point in the video, British corporations were working as British corporations before Americans really caught on to that. You know, Henry Ford made the production line. Sure, we took that from them, but he never really goes into the nuances of why America and Britain are so similar in the first place, and he never really goes into, actually, we had the idea of freedom before America was even a country. It's like the idea of freedom came from the ether when America was formed, rather than just as an obvious road down which America would go, given that it was effectively an English colony and project. Anyway, happy I went through that. I have absolutely no doubt that these people will just carry on grifting as they are and have absolutely no new ideas in 4 years' time while they are losing everything. They might get more support when they're actually losing because they won't have to lie about losing anymore, but yeah, in the meantime, I'm going to enjoy all the young men who are coming over to Reform, because joining Reform is cool nowadays. Why is Reform cool nowadays? Because it's genuinely countercultural, and the culture has just been horrendous. Especially politically, for years now. People were Tories mainly to try and push it to the direction Reform is in now. Leftists have stayed the same for decades, and they only won because the right ate itself. So you're screwed. It's good to see. It's good to see you have no idea what to do about that either. It's going to be a great few years. Anyway, that's all. So shield time. Tonight, it's Tosh News. We will be doing it over on the Worcester Club channel. We will be looking at news stories of the past couple of weeks, so do go over to there. Laughing at the Guardian with some whamming, that is on Saturday, so do look forward to that too. Video out as and when I can make them. Right, well, if you want to help out the channel, do subscribe, do become a channel member, do send super chats and super thanks. They are the best ways to do it, obviously. You can also leave a comment and a like on the video as well. That really helps with the algorithm. And also, if you're a member, £2 a month, you get the entire collection of my Laughing at the Guardian streams that are behind paywalls otherwise. So there you go. Hopefully you think that my work is worth that. Right, anyway, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. Once again, thank you very much for watching. Until next time, goodbye.